Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where Justin's going to be giving away his LinkedIn strategy for free. I'm your host, Laura, and I'm going to pass over to Justin to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin McGuire. I run MCG Talent. I also run a coaching business systems, and I'm a partner in a personal brand and awareness business. Look, I wanted to do this today because I've built a big chunk of my business on LinkedIn. I get lots of questions about what my LinkedIn strategy is, why I post so regularly on LinkedIn. We've done a few webinars where we've talked about personal brand, etc. And I just felt that I might as well write down with you and give you the tools and tricks that I use, the hacks that I use to grow an audience and to get the results that we do. So for me, LinkedIn's been great for building awareness for my brand, of course, but it's also been great in getting leads coming through to the recruitment business, opening doors, being able to network, do lots of things that I don't think I'd have ever been able to do otherwise had I not been on social media, because social media gets you in front of a far wider audience. It allows me to open doors for my podcast. It allows me to open doors for my businesses. It allows me to, I suppose, network from a business perspective in somewhere like Dubai at a level that can really make a difference. So I wanted to share that up with everyone today.
Okay, perfect. We've got some exciting stuff coming. So before we do get into it, I am just going to run through a bit of housekeeping. For those of you that join us often on these webinars, you'll already know all this, but for those who are new, a recording will be available afterwards for all registrants. But if you do stay with us on the live, you'll be able to ask questions in real time using the chat function. Now, to do that, if you wiggle your mouse over the chat box at the bottom of the screen, you can pop your questions in there at any point during the webinar. Only myself and Justin will see those questions coming in, so don't be shy, get them in at any point. Now, to get us used to using that function, I'm going to begin by asking you guys a question, and you can pop your answers in the chat box. So, when it comes to LinkedIn, what is your biggest challenge right now? Is it knowing what to post, staying consistent, turning engagement into leads? There's no right or wrong answer. We're just curious to see where everyone's at. Now, whilst those answers are coming in, I am just going to cover the agenda. So first, we're going to look at Justin's LinkedIn strategy. Then we're going to go through a step-by-step breakdown. Then move into some real examples and outcomes, look at some common pitfalls, and then we'll pass over to you for an audience Q&A. So just to run through some of the answers that have come through in the chat, all of the above: engagement to leads, posting consistently, knowing what to post, too many algorithm rules. That's an interesting one. There is a lot of algorithm rules. Now, hopefully we're going to answer all these questions, but if there's anything that we haven't covered, like I said, pop those questions in. So first section is strategy. Justin, why LinkedIn over other platforms?
For me, when I looked at the difference that I wanted to make in my business and why I wanted to choose the platform I wanted to choose, for me, LinkedIn was always the one to go for. LinkedIn has always been the best B2B serving platform for me. My business predominantly serves the B2B environment, so it was just a no-brainer. For me, B2B, it was always going to be LinkedIn. And I looked, as with most things, I shadowed those that I thought were doing it very well. So I noticed that they always had these common traits in mind. They were consistent, they were targeted, and the content mattered to their audience. It was clear that the direction they were firing out their content to was exactly for their ICP, their ideal customer profile. I wanted to play the game. I studied, I've been posting on LinkedIn now for, a decade. It started off with me just posting jobs and then moved much more content focus. I know people don't chase virality, don't chase posts for likes, but I just feel like it makes sense to play a platform at its game. And the algorithm does keep changing, so I study that a lot. I look at what works and what doesn't work, and I've tailored my content to that over the years. Okay, and I've focused on visibility to the right people. I see people posting for the sake of posting, and it makes me wince. I'm sure it makes other people do as well. And I see people heavily leveraging on automation right now, which again, that LinkedIn encourages authenticity. So I've really sort of tried to always make my content that I put out as relevant as possible for the audience that I'm trying to target to, and it's always the one that's delivered most returns. Now I've got a coaching platform. I've changed things slightly, and I've started to dial up on Instagram. I've started to dial up on YouTube. We're also going into TikTok as well, and that involves a completely different strategy. Okay, but for B2B, which I'm going to talk to you about today on LinkedIn, it's been consistency, targeting, and the type of content.
Okay, amazing. Now, when you started, what was your goal on LinkedIn?
So I come from a marketing communications background, and clients used to give us a lot of money to make sure that they were the authoritative voice within their subject. Okay. So my initial goal always, whenever I thought about how I could get onto LinkedIn, was to shout the loudest. Okay. Was to be the best known in the space that I am. Best, as one of my podcast guests once said, best known beat. So true. I wanted to be the person that owned the marketing communication space within recruitment in the Middle East. And I thought if I post more jobs, if I shout louder, if I talk about content, if I get myself on literature, if I get myself on LinkedIn and share what we're doing, we will own that space. And to those who are in the Middle East, I would say to a degree we achieved that. Okay. So it was to be the loudest, to be top of mind, to grow credibility, to build trust. And with all that, the followers came. All right. But the thing that came faster than that was the business.
Okay, so in those early days, how did you create the consistency of posting regularly?
So in the early days, it was about showing up. I made a point of posting daily about the jobs that we were mostly working on, the client wins that we had, the type of stuff that we're working on, the new hires that we made, the direction the business was going in. Over time, of course, as the platform has matured, I've completely changed the way the strategy is. And probably the time I changed the most was around about COVID. Now, when we were all in lockdown, I decided that I would post every single day. And I actually have not stopped posting every single day since making that decision 5 years ago. But I wanted to be completely targeted. Now, back in when I did it in COVID, it was all around offering help. I was basically trying to promote the work that was going on. If there was any jobs going, I'd make people aware of it. And I would just try and talk about what was going on in the market, what I was hearing. Now, 5 years later from that, I've got a clear strategy. And there's 5 types of posts that I use. Okay. Those are an awareness post, a personal post, an educational post, an intellectual property post, and a conversion post. And I do it, I put things through in that system. And if I show up when others don't, well, to me, that's 80% of the game, because most people don't show up every day. Most people don't produce content that's gonna tick all of those boxes that I said. Most people struggle with consistency. And I felt to myself, if I had a system, awareness, personal, educational, intellectual property, and conversion, I would be able to help people. So I thought what I'd do is I just go through exactly what I think makes the perfect LinkedIn post. And I can go through the different formats and what works for me and how I build an audience in my business. Okay. Now, I think when you think about what you're going to write in a LinkedIn post, the first thing you need to think about is who your ICP is. Okay. So who is my ideal customer profile? Am I a finance company that's or selling accounting services? Am I looking for a job? That's a completely different. That in itself, your target then is an employer. Am I a recruitment business looking to break into new markets? Am I an advertising company? So you've got to focus on what your ICP is and who you sell that to. Then you've got to think about what the main pain point is that you're trying to fix. Okay, so in recruitment, it's your ideal talent. It's if you're in accounting services, it could be that you're trying to solve tax problems. Okay, and then you've got to work out, what does your ideal customer profile want to read? So how you can if it's accounting services, how you can simplify and optimize people's taxes. In recruitment, how you can find the ideal candidate in as quickest way as possible. Okay, and now that's, once you've got that nailed, you can then move on to understanding what the different types of posts are. Okay. Now, the first one, which I said was an awareness post, that is a post that's just designed to get as much traction and attention as possible. It's using sort of pre-validated ideas and concepts to align ideas and values with your personal brand. Okay. So with that, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is who I serve. A general awareness post about what you do. Okay. Why you do it. And you can put some, and what your background is. It's really making people aware about who you are as the person. That would be the post number one I would always do. And I always constantly try and remind people who I am, what I'm doing every week. If you see my posts, you'll see that there's always an awareness post in there. The second type of post is the personal story post. Now, again, if you follow me, you'll know that I'm not afraid to post a war story or two. You'll know that I'm not afraid to tell about what myself, what Helen, what the kids, what we've been doing, the life we have, because I feel like I have to practice what I preach. But also, I want my audience to understand who I am, what I'm about, and also just it helps to convey authenticity. Okay. So what I try and do with a personal story post is put these different points in. First of all, I try and have a relatable pain hook. Okay. So for me, you'll find that sometimes I talk about in 2016 when I made some mistakes as an entrepreneur, how that had an impact on me, my business, or my family. Okay. What I also do is I talk about how maybe the transitions that I've made in my business. So when I talk a lot about a lean and agile business, and I talk about how I had to make difficult decisions going from 15 people down to 3 people and what the outcome was, but how I didn't enjoy letting go of those people. So what you'll find is there's lots of things that I can do there that gives a personal story. What I put into my business, the sacrifices that I made along the way, why it's important of being a father in the business. I put those stories out quite regularly because they're relatable. Okay. These relatable points will draw your audience in. Talk about your wins, but also don't be afraid to talk about your losses. Okay. If anything, talking about your losses and your failures often gets more attention than talking about your wins. Because let's be honest, LinkedIn is full of backslapping. Okay. So if you've got the guts to do something different, to talk about your failures, but talk about what you've learned, what you've achieved the other side, then 100% you're going to bring in an audience and it's going to get the right type of eyeballs on you. Okay. Now you might be thinking, hang on a minute, I'm a service. Why do I want to be talking about my failures, etc.? You've got to stop that mindset because ultimately people sell to people and people will relate to you if you're authentic. In a world where everyone is writing like ChatGPT, if you have the guts to put your neck out there and say something different, I see that the algorithm likes it, the platform likes it, and the people like it. Okay. The third one I'm going to say is the education post. Okay. And this is a post that's simply designed to educate and stimulate your audience. Okay. So it's about telling your areas, what your key areas of your business are. Okay. How you can become the trustworthy resource into solving the problems that you say you do. Okay. If in recruitment, what you'll find is I often give, you might see yesterday that I talked about Saudi. I talked about the market in Saudi because I have a business there. I recruit in that market. I talk about what the reality is there. Okay. You've got to, I think often with those ones, you've got to be real and what your market is. You've got to talk in an informative way and don't try and rip off what everyone else does. If you've got the ability to have an individual voice in the education post and talk about experiences that your business is seeing and talk about individualism, you're going to make a real difference there. So you can use carousels for this as well. You can use infographics. I would always recommend on each of these things that I've said that you put a picture with it at least. What I'm noticing right now is the algorithm is hugely favoring infographics, is hugely favoring carousels. So if you can put infographics and carousels, if you've got people that can do it, if you're pretty good on Canva, if you know how to use tools, I would 100% on the education post look to put something like this along. An example I can give you for my coaching business could be, here's our business strategy clean cheat sheet, and we would put the different points there together. Okay. Point number 4, I would say on post, this would be the conversion post. Okay. This is a format that's designed to show how your methodology has previously delivered the exact results your customer is looking for. Now, I see lots of people post about who they work with, but they never really talk about what they did. Okay. A best way of doing this is to be raw and honest and use case studies. So for example, in our coaching business, the people that have been through our program, we get them to do a video, we get them to talk about what their business looked like before, what their business looked like afterwards. And we use that as a way of trying to get in more customers for our coaching business, naturally, because we're endorsed by someone that's run through our program. You tend to find that a lot of people just are glad to say who they work with, but not give any examples of what they've done. Well, that's never really going to serve you that well if you just see a logo or if you just see a name there. So if you talk about in your story, if you talk about what you did, how you converted this particular client, the difference that you made to this were, what the difficult elements were, and how you walk someone through that, then if you choose that powerful success story, you're likely to get a really positive response from your audience. But you need to think about doing these consistently. Okay. So that's the success story post. And then post number 5, I'm going to say, this is the intellectual property. Now, I come from the recruitment industry where typically everyone was very scared of telling people how they did things. And I think that's such a dated way of looking at things. What you've got to do, if you are the person, who talks about what you do and how you do it, you automatically look like the authoritative voice. You automatically educate your audience on your methodology, and therefore you start to own that piece. Okay, it's your intellectual property that will set you apart. It's your intellectual property where people pay for the differentiation of using you. Okay, and that's really where you lean people in on trust. Not a lot of people put this out. Not a lot of people have the guts to say, this is how we do it. But just because you put it on LinkedIn doesn't mean the whole world's going to steal it. All it does is cement why you are the right person for that. And the intellectual property post is super important in the whole ecosystem that you're running there. So I'm just going to go through it again. It's the awareness post. It's the personal story post. It's the education post, the conversion post, and the how we do it post.
Amazing. There's so much information there for everyone. So we'll definitely do a bit of a wrap up after this of everything Justin shared there, because some really, really good tips on how you can stay consistent and keep going back to those 5 post types. So we are going to move on to the next section just to make sure we keep on top of time. So let's look at a step-by-step breakdown of how you do it. So what is step 1 in your LinkedIn strategy?
Yeah, this obviously an incredibly important element is actually how you look. Okay, so you've got to make sure you've got a professional picture there. Look, you don't need to go to a photo salon or whatever it is. You've got to make sure you've just got a professional picture. You've got a headline that talks about who you serve. Your about section needs to be completely honest. You'll find that on mine, I've actually done a timeline. I've actually talked about what I did at certain ages in my life, because I want everyone to know, if I'm going to be someone that's going to talk about coaching services and recruitment services, I want people to know that I practice what I preach. Okay. The featured section, you'll notice that I've got some highlights there where I talk about how I've scaled my business, what I've done with it. Again, that is for me, that's free advertising. Okay. So within your featured section, always make sure that you've got something in there that showcases who you are, what you're about, who you serve, the audience that you've got. You can actually make that a landing page. It's a real cheat sheet for how you can make that a landing page. The second thing I'll do is the content, okay? Because what people will then study is the content that you've got. So that 5 post system that I put there, if you've got that in a systemized fashion, when people go and look at who you are, they can see that this person knows what they're doing. They can see this person is a real, is an expert or has an intelligent and articulate thing to say on their subject matter, okay? And make sure that's written only for your ideal customer profile, which I've just talked through. Third thing I'll say, and this is the really people forget on, okay? If you're going to do all this work, make sure that you're engaging with people. Comment, direct message, reply, and build real relationships that way as well. Commenting is something that many people forget. They literally put all this work out and they ghost, okay? If you start commenting, the algorithm now absolutely loves it because it draws more eyeballs on you. I did a test where I commented 100 times and my impressions went through the roof. So commenting on the right audience, finding your ideal customer profile, finding who's engaged in that subject matter, and commenting regularly is an absolute cheat sheet, and you draw people into your profile. If you're not doing that, you're missing a simple trick, okay? And the other conversion is lead magnets and direct messages and link funnels. Now, what I mean by lead magnets is, from a recruitment perspective, you'll see us put up salary surveys. You'll see us put up, information about certain areas that we work in. You'll see us do commentaries about sectors where we recruit in. These specialist sectors work as lead magnets for us. People download them and we can convert them that way as well.
Okay, super. Lots of great tips there as well. And I'm going to check out your age specified timeline when we get off this call. I think I might do the same. That's such a great idea. I love it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it shows how old I am now, which, well, there we go. There we
You're
go.
not old. It's fine.
Gets you everywhere, Laura.
Oh, I know. So, next question. How do you choose what content to post on which day?
Look, I just ran through, I suppose, the 5 different elements that I use. I try and follow that system. I make it relevant for me personally. I try and make it relevant to what I've got going on that week as well. So now I have a podcast that I do. So often I'll interject what we learned from that. We've got a webinar, I'll use it to promote that. So I keep in mind what my diary and agenda looks like, but I always keep the 5 posts or the 5 different angles that I've got in mind. I spend 30 minutes a day and the team supports me sort of repurposing content because I always want to be present and useful. The worst thing is if you know, I be careful with scheduling the whole time. I've seen that not work out for many people. I've heard from some other people that do that regularly that they've really noticed a drop in engagements if they're just scheduling everything as well. So keep that in mind. Also, LinkedIn has really picked up on people that are cut and pasting from ChatGPT now. If you'll find that you're doing that, you'll probably find that your impressions are going down quite considerably or noticeably. So keep that up. Again, put that in mind. Write authentically. You'll find that a lot of some of the best advice that you can get on writing out there, some of the best content you can see is the same repurposed content that's been spinning around for ages. Ogilvy David Ogilvy, probably one of the great copywriters. He was, he often talked about some of his influences that he had from that were decorated authors from 100 years ago. The same types of content is used over and over again, the same different formats. And I spent about 30 days planning that.
It's super interesting that you mentioned then about copying and pasting from ChatGPT and your engagement dropping. I read something the other day about LinkedIn bringing in an AI kind of spam filter now. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's well known, and I've heard this myself from the inside that if you're using AI comment systems right now, then you're literally shooting yourself in the feet because the LinkedIn is just that they want to encourage conversation. And what these AI bots are doing that are commenting on so much are just killing, they're nullifying everyone's platform and they're ruining conversation. So they're actually, if you've got anything LinkedIn now that's AI that's systemizing all your comments, you're damaging your own outreach. You're gonna find that LinkedIn's gonna start to move you out the system because it's just simply not encouraging conversation. I
Mhm.
mean, whenever I reply, I get so many of these, and whenever I reply to try and encourage conversation with people, I never hear anything back. So that tells you in itself that it's killing conversation.
Yeah. So moving on to balancing, how do you balance content, engagement, and conversation? I know we just touched upon conversation. So let's dig a bit deeper into that.
So, in what sense, Laura? So, can you just say that again?
Sure. So how do you balance content, engagement, and conversation?
Yeah. So, look, I think content in terms of how I would rebalance that. I often share my thoughts and opinions out there. Okay. I often will talk about my war stories. I often will talk about what the common pitfalls that I found. You'll find that with me, the stuff that where's raw, it's honest, it always encourages conversation. I'm not a big fan of answering big looping questions at the bottom of a post, Laura. I like to push forward my opinions. I like to push forward my thoughts and then allow that point that I put forward to be something that encourages a comment. I'm often quite emotional. I'm often quite I speak from the heart, and I tend to find that gives a really good reaction.
Yeah, authenticity. So do you have like a limit on how many comments you would write per day?
I've done up to 100. I try and do about, for example, just before I've joined this, I've seen there's this real trend at the moment of belittling the UK. I'm from the UK, that people do, and comparing the UAE to the UK. And I had to comment on that. And I find that I'll draw myself sometimes into some quite controversial comments where I feel the need. But ultimately, because I know very clearly who my ICP is, I can be very efficient in doing that. I can do in 30 minutes to an hour. I can put my opinions and encourage conversation with about 50 different customers.
Okay, wow. I mean, I'm still hung on that 100 comments a day. That's quite impressive.
I wanted to do it just to see the difference that it would make for engagement, Laura. And I think that for me, that was super important. Because I'm testing all the time, because this is part of the job that we do, right? And because I've built this inbound machine, I need to know. Not too long ago, LinkedIn had a full video platform. They were encouraging us to use video, almost as we were on Instagram. And then you'll find that was casually taken away from the platform. But they were at one point, they were really, really putting their weight behind video. So you had to repurpose your content to adapt to that.
Yeah, got you. So, in terms of, I want to come back to that scheduling content. I know that you mentioned scheduling a lot can really damage your reach. Do you ever kind of schedule that content, or is it all done in real time?
For me personally, most of the stuff that I've done is real time. I believe that the cheat code to what I put out there has to be that it's authentic. Okay. And I mix that up with video. I mix that up with link algorithms, with carousels, and I mix that up with infographics. And I mix and also recordings of my podcast and activity and family stories that we said. I want people to be reassured that it's me that they're hearing from. And if I do that, if I'm doing it with written and if I'm doing it with video, I'm always serving to reassure the message that way. I don't schedule. Only when I have, sorry, that's a lie. When I go away on holiday and I want to shut off for 3 or 4 days and I still want something to go out there, yes, you'll see that I schedule, but it will be on elements that we've got coming out. So it could be a podcast release, it could be a salary survey that's coming out, or it could be just an opinion based on something that I know has been launched at a certain time.
Hmm. Got you. And as you know what, sometimes you need a few days to just take a bit of a breather. So it makes complete sense. And it's still you writing the post. So what's a hurt of a little schedule here and there?
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned also earlier about repurposing content or reusing it. How do you do that but still keep it fresh?
Look, I think let's be frank, right? A lot of people, a lot of people believe that the post that they might have put up like 6 months ago is still fresh in people's minds. I think you've got to keep like go and look at what's worked for you before. Often the clues are there. So often I'll look at what types of I'm always studying which posts have always had the most impressions, what I've had the most engagement with, what topics people come out with, and I can the clues are there, and I continue to go down that path, Laura. I continue to go deeper into that, or to sometimes repurpose what I've said before. You'll find that a lot of the biggest content creators out on LinkedIn or any platform, quite often they're repeating what they've said 4, 5, 6 months ago. And it's once you've got your ideal customer profile in mind, once you're clear on what your message is, once you can see that point's landing, you've got to keep reaffirming it. So don't be afraid to use the same post. People don't remember what they liked 2 weeks ago, yesterday. I mean, people like it's been proven that our humans now have the memories worse than goldfishes. So don't get too hung up on what you posted before and repurposing it.
I'm look shocked at the humans have worse memories than goldfishes, but I'm actually not that shocked. Okay, let's move on to some real examples now because we love a story. So tell us how this has worked in your business or your businesses.
Yeah, the ones that have gone that has taken off for us are when we reduced the size of our recruiters. When I talked about building an agile team, so scaling down, I told the real story behind that. I talked about how I don't enjoy letting go of people, and when I did that, and the hurt that I felt doing that. I've talked about 2016, some of the mistakes I made in business. I've talked about moving abroad and the loneliness that you can feel. Having a small family and moving to Singapore. The key here is being human. That's what scales, all right? That's what really worked. Being human. You're going to hear me say this a lot now, but being authentic and being human is what everyone seems to gravitate towards. And Even more so now, the platform seems to encourage that. And that's why I keep drumming on the point about people using AI tools. Look, I understand if you want to get ideas, there's a great way to use AI. You can prompt it to let you know those different types of posts that I've run through, which I can go through to people with people afterwards as well. You can use it to prompt some of those stories, but make sure they're written by you. Make sure they come from you. All right. So that's what's really worked for me.
Okay, so the key here is authenticity is key. Be honest and have a plan, I guess, as well. Now, when it comes to personal brand versus company brand, what's the difference in the types of posts that you would put out there?
Look, honestly, right now, you might notice on your LinkedIn feed, there's never a company brand there. You'll find, it's quite clear that none of the platforms now are pushing company profiles. Same with Instagram. You literally they push the person. Okay, so just think about Virgin. Richard Branson, how many followers he has versus Virgin. I think Ronaldo has more followers than every single football team added up, right, on Instagram. So if you think about what that in mind, okay, company brands, they get credibility when we purchase, but one person has to lead the narrative. Okay, you need a figurehead to lead the narrative of a company, and that's where personal brand becomes so important. Often it's the founder or a key stakeholder in the business who leads that narrative, and they make sure that the posts they put out, they're emotional, they're useful, and they're consistent. Okay, and if you do so, that's what leads to the conversion. You need to have a consistent figurehead.
And you said earlier, people buy from people, so that's obviously a key element of it here as well. Um,
Absolutely.
Now, on LinkedIn, we hear a lot about people asking questions about oversharing and what's an appropriate thing to talk about. How do you decide what stories are worth telling? Is there like a gut check that you use or a filter?
I go back to always what I said at the beginning, okay? And that's understanding who your ICP is, okay? So if I'm thinking about what do I post about, I think I go through a checklist, okay? One, topics that relate to my brand, okay? So I post, let's say, for example, for my coaching, I post about why having a growth mindset matters, okay? Second one, a personal and relatable story. Okay, so I post about a personal struggle, an achievement, or something that's happened in my life where it's made an impact on me. The third thing I think about is a post about, for example, why business owners should focus on building a personal brand, why entrepreneurs, recruitment business owners should focus on hiring and delegation, why I believe it's right for business owners to use headhunters to find those core senior hires that they may need. The fourth one, how I talk about how we've done our service. Okay. So I talk about the services I provided. We talk about the results we've achieved. Okay. And the fifth one we do is that it's our intellectual property. So how do you service? Okay. So I have these things in mind all the time. So that gives clear clarity as to how I know how to structure and how I know how to post. So I post about why people could learn from our intellectual property and how we do it.
Okay, perfect. And has there ever been a post that you thought was going to do really well but completely flopped?
Many times, many times. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You don't think you're going to win every time. A lot of people can get a bit subdued, fed up, frustrated that they're putting all this work in, that they're putting all this effort, and they're getting absolutely zero traction. Look, I still do posts that absolutely bomb. I still do posts that absolutely flop. And sometimes it's the one you just think, the top of your head and fling out can fly. Okay. But quite often they can be some of the most authentic ones as well. The trick is to learn from them. All right. The trick is to understand why they might have flopped. I, you know, there was what did I do that flopped? I went through this phase of posting quote famous I started quoting sort of Churchill and other famous historical figures. I remember I thought I did it once and I thought this was going to really cotton on. So I started doing a series of quotes and how they affected me. The first one went really well, and they literally nosedived after that. And I even got a couple of DMs from people saying, "I used to enjoy your content." So sometimes your audience could be giving you a clear signals of what to do and what not to do.
Brutal that he popped into your DMs and said that. But at least
Oh,
he's
if you make
honest.
a spelling mistake, people will kindly share that with you, I find.
I mean, yes, or God forbid, a grammar error or a punctuation error. Okay, now just to make sure we stay on time, let's move on to our next section, which is common pitfalls. What do most people get wrong?
So I'm gonna say here, the first one is they post and ghost. Okay. So I like that saying. Basically, they post, they put, give it, they go out, they talk about everything they've done, and then they never comment on any of their sections, and they then don't comment on anyone else. So they're literally just posting machines, but they're not spending any time whatsoever to invest in talking to their audience. That's a real big crime. It's a big LinkedIn crime, guys. The second is, and people they outsource their voice. Okay, now it's fine to use use people to help you with LinkedIn, use people to help you with the strategy. That's absolutely cool. And there's we have a business, other people have a business doing this, but don't lose your voice. The whole purpose of doing it, if you outsource, everything has to be your tone, everything has to be authentic. If you don't have time, it makes perfect sense to use strategic support. Never turn your voice into someone else. Okay. So don't outsource your voice. Third thing I'll say is people don't have a funnel. They don't have any sort of, sales. They're posting away. They're just posting for the sake of it, and they have no idea how to convert. They're sending out, all they're doing is sending out a raft of different invites to people on LinkedIn about, oh, I'd like to add you, I'd like to. They're direct message selling the whole time. They're not doing anything authentic. They're not producing anything that gives anyone a reason why they should hang around their profile. They're immediately selling, which is always a big problem as well. No one likes being sold to straight away. And they have no idea who they're writing for. That's the final thing I'm going to say. People haven't invested the time to understand what their ICP is. And they're simply copying what everyone else has done and just getting lost in the noise and never doing anything different. You'll find that now, again, with ChatGPT, LinkedIn is awash with the same old tribe. So it's so easy to stand out when everyone is punting out the same average tribe. The other thing I'll just say is LinkedIn is one of the only platforms left where only 1% of those on it actually create. So everyone else is watching, right? And if you can post something that's genuinely good, you're going to have a much better chance of standing out.
So plan and preparation is what I'm getting from that. Is so important.
Understanding your ICP, as you can see, there's a real consistency there. And I know there's been questions about how can you convert this into sales? Well, if you're doing all those 5 steps that I've said and you're talking consistently, it will naturally convert because you'll be seen as the voice in that subject.
You'll be a thought leader in that space then if you're doing that consistently. Now, there's a lot of advice out there. What bad advice do you see being put out there?
Um, just post more. That's a great one because that's just lazy, and then you're just becoming noise. You're not having any strategy behind it. The other one that I see people is you need a clear offer, and that means that they're just focusing on the sell the whole time. They're not focusing on actually who they are, the individuals. Many of the aspects which I've spoken about and how you should write a post, they're completely ignoring that. And the other thing I would just say is there's a lot of people out there who feel that they shouldn't play the algorithm tools. Okay, they shouldn't just study the algorithm. They shouldn't try and be viral. And I just can't understand the principle of that. Right? I want to be as popular as possible and get as many leads as possible as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
Now, I think that's one of the main reasons people use the platform for, right? It's not, people don't just post because they're obsessed with posting. I imagine they want an outcome. So take your time and study what the platform does, what's working and what's not. Test all the time.
Yeah, understanding that algorithm, and it changes so much, so you have to keep on top of that, right? I know that you've always been very good at knowing what the algorithm is doing right now, so you can definitely send me where your links are to find out all that information, but absolutely so important. Now, what if you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing? You're posting, you're commenting, you're doing everything that you've said, but you're not seeing results.
Look, the thing is, don't give up. All right. The amount of humans I know that don't have the ability to keep going. We all started on zero, right? You know, we I was posting content when no one was engaging at all. But you've got to keep going. You've got to show you've got stamina. And that's one of the weaknesses as many human beings have, is that they just don't have the stamina for it. The things you need to check, first of all, audit your hook. LinkedIn is loving the 2 sentence hook right now. I've tested it. I've tried different ones. I've noticed I'm getting the best responses on the 2 sentence hook. Audit your clarity. A lot of people post, and I'm not entirely sure what their message is. Okay, so make sure you're clear. You're very clear in what you're talking about. If it's an emotional post, if it's a personal post, keep it that way. Don't try and put a sales hook at the end, right? If it's an educational post, keep it that way. If it's an intellectual property post, keep it that way. Make sure you're consistent, as I've said many, many times. And if your content isn't converting, you're probably unclear, invisible, or inconsistent.
So none of those, what my wedding day taught me about B2B sales.
That's the classic. What I learned from sales from my cat, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I see those ones quite a lot actually, but they do make me chuckle. Okay, let's move on to kind of your early experiences. What's one mistake that you made early on that you wouldn't repeat now?
Yeah, I thought about this, and I think what I would say is in the early days, I'm a lot more opinionated now. I'm a lot more me, and maybe that comes with age. But I was probably a bit vanilla in the way I posted, Laura. Personality, I was quite vanilla in. I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want to. I just wanted to try and walk the line. And actually, I really didn't get much engagement from that. Once I started to be a bit more as if anyone, we all get imposter syndrome, right? Once I became a lot more comfortable in my skin and what I was, and in my, and actually understood that I was good at what I did, and I wasn't afraid to have an opinion. I got way more attention. And in life, there's going to be people that will want to work with you, and there's going to be people that aren't going to want to work with you. If you accept that, life's going to get a lot better, people. All right. So the minute I was stopped being so vanilla was when things really started to take off as well.
So be mint chocolate chip, don't be vanilla. Okay, this is the last question I'm going to ask you, and then we're going to move into an audience Q&A where we will go through everyone's questions because we've had a lot that have come through during the webinar. My final question to you is there any advice you used to believe about LinkedIn that you've completely thrown out now?
Yeah, I can't, honestly, it would be probably what I've just said there about just making sure I hold back, making sure that you try and please everyone, you do the. I just fuck it. Sorry, my swearing, but I just went for it. Okay, I wasn't afraid to be me, and the minute I got comfortable with that is when everything changed. The minute that decision to post every day since COVID and start offering out advice, I engage with more people than I've ever engaged with before. Okay. And as we all got stuck at home and I was posting pictures of me, the family getting stuck, locked in Singapore. That was the world's longest lockdown then. When I talked about it, what life was like, so many people could relate to that. And I drew so many eyeballs onto my business. And I wasn't talking about recruitment, but naturally people understood what I did from looking at my profile and going through things. And I really made inroads from not talking about recruitment. I was like, bang, yes, this is how you do it. And this goes back to my roots as a communicator. Talk in a real voice, talk in a way that people can relate to. And I probably kept my family and life as a dad a bit shielded, and then I went from zero, from holding that back, to boom, absolutely making everyone aware of it. And I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to talk about that, and that makes me human, I guess, and a lot of people relate to it.
100%. And it comes back to what you said earlier about authenticity.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we're going to go over to our chat box and have a look at some of these questions that have come in. Now, if there's any that you really want to answer, please feel free to go ahead. There's quite a lot, honestly, that I saw, and I thought, oh, we haven't answered that. I'm going to definitely ask that question. So I'm going to go back to the top and have a little look. We had an interesting question about what countries you're offshoring from. Um, it's not really relevant to personal brand, but
We can take that one afterwards.
yes, let's go back to that one at the end.
And
Uh,
just to be clear, I don't offshore any of my LinkedIn. The LinkedIn comes from me. It comes from, we get people to help with some of the administration, but all the voice and tonality that we come across, that comes from me. And the strategies that we deploy for people now on LinkedIn, they're ones that we know work.
okay. Now, obviously, we're based in the Middle East here, and we have somebody on from Saudi that's asking if you know of any specific timings or days that work best for a Saudi audience or don't work for a Saudi audience.
So I've actually found with Saudi that posting in the morning really makes it, I actually, and also Sundays, seems to me Sunday mornings I get the best engagement. And often between 8, sorry, and 9:30 a.m. Saudi time.
Okay. Now, this person says they've got too much to say. So, is there a limit on how much he can write on his posts? Because he's going to start writing his first post.
Yeah, I think be like take up all the words on the post, right? Again, I'm not saying I'm not saying that you shouldn't use AI, but a great way you can use AI, right, is to write your post, put it into AI and say it does all the characters that I needed for my LinkedIn post, right? That's a great way of making sure you've got that box covered.
Hmm. Okay. Now, this question is about B2C because we talked about B2B and how great LinkedIn is for that. So when it does come to B2C, is LinkedIn the platform of choice for you to engage with individuals directly?
I would follow the guru in this, who would say, who like you can look up on this. He says B2C, TikTok, B2B, LinkedIn, the two power platforms.
Okay, super. Okay, let's have a little. AI is putting a lot of jobs at risk. Do you think it's impacting recruitment?
I think it's very much disrupting recruitment. I talk about this a lot. So here you go. This is a post, the education post. All right. Now I talk about the types of different posts I do. This is one where I'm specifically going to talk about, and it's one I've been working on about how AI is impacting recruitment. Now I talk about this frequently. I changed my own business because of this, because this was coming. AI is many service businesses, not just recruitment, it's disrupting. And the education post is where you can talk to your market about that. I now coach founders specifically because of this. So yeah, I think it is, but that's perhaps not about LinkedIn strategy here.
Yeah, more so about recruitment in general. Now back to the LinkedIn strategy. How do you find posts that you would want to comment on?
So I identify who your ideal customer profile is. So who are the people that you want to reach? Okay. You can actually search via posts. Okay. Search via posts, see who's talking in your region, in your market, start commenting. You'll draw those eyeballs onto you. It's a great strategy to start that way.
Okay, now when it comes to videos, is how long do you think they should be, those short style videos?
60 seconds, 90 max, I would say, for LinkedIn. Short form video works best. All right. Now, you can occasionally get a longer video that will work. And I've tested it. I've tested with the phone. I've got this high spec camera. I've got a videographer. I've tested with all of them. Interestingly, the ones that seem to make the most, like hit the mark the most, and my videographer's probably not going to be happy with me saying this, is when I just pick up the phone and just do something and say something raw. Okay. That seems to land pretty well, but I do quite polished content and raw content. Now, look, sometimes you're not going to get the most impressions with video, but all you need is 5 to 10 people who are going to be engaged with you to convert. Okay. Now, what video does is it serves to reinforce who you are. You guys know what I sound like now because I do these webinars, because I do the podcast, because I do video. And again, if you want to make inroads into your audience, video, tonality, how you sound, how you look plays a huge part in that. People believe in you when they see you and hear you talk. AI hasn't replaced video yet in many instances. Okay, so this is me. This is no fake background. So that is the way you can authentically deliver to your audience.
It's not a fake background. I know exactly where you are. Okay, now somebody has put a comment in about having a bit of a side hustle going on, which obviously lots of people in Dubai do. They work in full-time employment and have a bit of a side hustle. Does it hurt their chances of potentially getting a new job in the future if they talk about their side hustle on their profile?
Not at all. Not at all. I think yeah, that's a real hard question for me to answer. I think if you want to show that if the side hustle is relevant to the future career that you're going to, not at all. If you are a heart surgeon and you're talking about sports marketing, then I don't think it's going to really help what you're doing. Okay, so I 100% think it needs to align. If it shows that you are more interested in that subject, then go talk about that. But look, I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you sound like you want to turn your side hustle into a job, then it's a great way of starting to build audience for your side hustle.
Hmm. Okay. Now, someone else has talked about there being a lot to consider, of course. Now, this is obviously going to be individual preferences, but is there a time of day where your brain works best when you can plan what you're going to post the best, whether that be the mornings or the evenings, lunchtime, weekends?
I am constantly looking in my phone is open all the time. I'm not actually searching for them. I think about what I want to post. Like I know I love posting, I love sharing. And I think about want to make sure that things that happen in my day that I remember them. So the notes section in my phone, I'm constantly using. I'm constantly just writing in hooks, ideas. When I'm talking to people a lot, in the podcast that I'm at, reactions that I've got, news articles that I've read, I'm always thinking about hooks that I can put into my posts. It was, again, this is a trick I learned when I was in the communications market, but I was always looking for ways in which we could bring a relevant hook into a story. And I think about that all the time with the posts. And often the comment section on your post is full of absolute nuggets when it's not written by AI.
Yes. You can actually, it's so simple, and this is why you definitely shouldn't do it. That on LinkedIn, you can literally just click great insights and it just posts it for you now. And it's like, yeah, it's not really adding anything. Um,
No.
Now, on that note of AI, somebody has asked about using direct DMs using apps like Sales Robot. Would you advise against those, or would you say, as long as they're written by a human, what would your thoughts be?
Look, I think to degrees there is some automation out there which Dripify, Reply.io, which actually I don't think are bad tools to use, but they're connection tools. I'm specifically talking in this one about content. I'm specifically talking about posting. Okay. And for this area, I don't think this is something that you should get an AI or a bot to run. I think you can work with a team. As I said, you can do it yourself. You can work with a team. A team can help you plan and post, but make sure everything's written in your voice because the system does not like picking up people who aren't writing authentically, and they will sniff you out.
Mm, they will. There's actual really complex filters on that now, so they definitely will sniff you out. Now, someone's asked if their post doesn't get much engagement in the first couple of hours and you feel like it's failed versus some of your other content, would you delete that post or leave it as it is?
Um, Honestly, I don't. I learn from it. It's all part of testing. Okay. It's all part of what you have to be honest, what went right, what went wrong with that. Okay. And if it's a really good post, maybe you needed to tweak and you can repurpose it a week or two later. All right. I don't delete and repost. I think I accept that this one's not working. I try and learn from it. Don't take it so much to heart. Okay. Just as long as you're consistent, you take a lot of what I mind, review and analyze what perhaps went wrong. Okay, was the hook right? Was the hook wrong? Again, as if anything in life, your failures are where you learn your most lessons from. And I think you should keep it up because then you can refer to it or look at it when you look to convert something that works.
Hmm. Now, the next question I want to come to is actually really interesting for me because it's something that I've thought about in the past as well. And someone's brought it up about sharing personal posts that involves their family in Saudi. He feels that it might not be okay on LinkedIn and more so that it belongs on Instagram. What are your thoughts on that kind of line between Instagram versus LinkedIn?
Well, I think anyone that follows me will know that I've actually believed that people, and I talked about the personal story post.
Yeah.
Okay, I've talked about my father's death. I've talked about my stepfather passing away. I've talked about the struggles I had as a dad, as an as an early father, father to three young kids and juggling work and personal life. I've chosen to include those into my story. You'll notice that on my title of my LinkedIn, I talk about being a husband and a father. So I've made that part of my story because I am a family person at heart.
Mhm.
Uh, Obviously, your family, if you feel they might not be comfortable with that, run it by them. But for me, I've integrated that wholeheartedly into who I am because it is who I am. And that's what I want you guys to take from this today is the more you leverage into you, your story, your family, no one can take that away from you. That's completely unique to you. And the more you do that, more people will inevitably buy into, and you'll attract the right people.
Absolutely. I think your family's such a big part of your personal brand. And I personally love seeing those posts, so I'm sure lots of other people do too. Now, we are going to have to wrap up in a moment, but before we do, I wondered if there was any one question you'd seen come through that you really wanted to answer, because we've still getting
Look,
lots and lots.
I can see there's lots here, and I feel bad. I don't know if we've got through all of them. So let's I saw that there's one about emojis.
Well, that one.
Personally, I do not like emojis on posts. I'm not a big fan. It also gives me a warning alarm bells that someone's used AI on there. So for me, I think a few years ago, maybe pre-chat GPT, I was okay with them. I've gone through a stage of maybe putting them on comments for a bit. I'm not really stands out. And I think now, a bit like the M dash, and see an emoji and you don't think it's authentic. So it's a no-no for me.
Fair enough. Okay, let's wrap up then. I'd like to thank you so much, Justin, for giving us your time, sharing your advice, and giving everybody some really, really valuable tips here.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I'm sorry I haven't managed to get through more questions. I don't mind answering like two or three more if you want to go for that, actually, if you
Okay,
want to
sure.
just
Yeah, let's.
um, let's choose three more.
Oof, this is hard. So many to choose from. I've got to pick the best ones now.
Someone's put what's called the easy carousel. I can answer Canva. Okay, just do a Canva. That's very simple.
Yeah, easy, easy. And you can get the free version as well, and they've got great, great templates on there too. Uh, mm,
If you had to restart today as a job seeker using content to land your dream role, what would be your first three posts be about? Experience, who you are, what you've done, what you've achieved. Don't be afraid. Like talk about where you've been, talk about the journey you've been on. Okay. Results. So let's go through like the awareness post. This is who you are. The personal story. This is who you are. And the education post. Okay, designed to educate and stimulate your audience. All right. The conversion post, examples of what you've done, and your intellectual property post, how you did it. Like if you're looking for a job, follow these five areas. Okay. Choose those five. They're the ones that are going to make you unique. Awareness, personal story, education, conversion, how you do it.
okay, last question. This person has asked a few times about their newsletter. Do you think a newsletter and writing that helps your reach and helps your personal brand?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to say on newsletter. Firstly, LinkedIn newsletter. Don't like if I was you, I'd convert people to get on your own news, like try and own the audience. Don't forget, LinkedIn owns LinkedIn could turn us all off tomorrow. Okay. So one of the things we try and do is get data so that we can own it, so that we can write our own newsletter. We can send it out to 100,000 people. LinkedIn doesn't choose who that audience, who to send that to. The thing, I have 100,000 followers. I run a post. And how come only 150, 200 people like it? Is it because my post good? No, it's because LinkedIn aren't sharing it with everyone now. They are in charge of how many impressions our posts get. So if you get the opportunity, and you want to write a newsletter, build it off LinkedIn. Use lead magnets, as I explained later, to take data, to get people to download and take them onto your newsletter off LinkedIn. That way you can email direct 100, 200,000 people, and LinkedIn doesn't decide who does or doesn't see that. So that's a big thing I would try and do. LinkedIn newsletter, it was quite popular. I'm seeing fewer and fewer people use it now because they're realizing LinkedIn own that intellectual property. They're in charge of how many people get sent it. The other thing is I've seen someone ask about LinkedIn articles. They don't get seen anymore. I don't know. I don't even see many people write them anymore. Focus on your posts. Focus on posting is what I want the take home to be from this as well.
Okay, last thing to mention is hashtags because we get this question a lot, and I know that you've got an algorithm update for us on this.
Don't hashtags are out. Don't use hashtags. They're out on all the platforms, by the way. Don't use them. They are it's well known, and I think most of the platforms now say that it's dated. It's not something that that's used or that can help more posts.
Okay, fab. Thank you so much. Let's round that up now. I'll be in touch, obviously, with the recording for everybody that's registered, so look out for that in your inbox. Now, Justin, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you after this?
Best way, honestly, for me is comment on my posts. Honestly, it's the best way to get seen. Best way to get seen with me is to comment on my posts. And I would say that for anyone that asks you that question as well, look out for my content, comment on my posts, because that's the best way. You can, it's very easy to get lost in clutter right now, direct messages, etc. So, I get thousands of messages, I get thousands of invitation requests, but comment on my posts and I see it straight away. Okay.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully, we answered most of those questions. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.